think it's best if we begin in the middle, because we happen to be within a continuum of time. So this moment is brought to you by a previous moment. And all lives are made possible by lives that came before it. You know what I mean, right? Now there was a generation before this time. Some called them idealists. Some said they were visionaries. Some just said they were rebelling. But when you asked them why they did what they did, they'd say, we really believed in a revolution. Who are they? Where are they? And is there something that they're trying to tell us?
This mass character for the moment is spontaneous, but certainly the mass character is there. If you just look back to the Rodney King situation. Just on the spot, they say, okay, it's too much, let's go, let's get them. And everybody says, okay, let's get them. And we rise up as mass and we get them. And then we sit down for 29 years.
Well, finding these believers isn't hard. It's just a matter of points. You can find them like you find anything else, by searching left and right, forward and back, or as it appears on a map, longitude and latitude, where those two lines intersect.
Like what your GPS does.
That type of point.
And once we arrive at where one of these plots intersect, we're at a location, somewhere that each of us physically occupy. So there we have a two-dimensional way of knowing where they are. And if you still can't find them there, then you apply a third dimension. But we got to get down to earth to see that. Here we go. Up and down. So 3 dimensions means we won't just search left and right, forward and back, but above us and below us. Like, are they on a mountaintop? Are they up in the sky? High? Or maybe they're down in the streets with the people, and we'll find them there. Or we're looking to see if they're in a high-rise building somewhere up, maybe a ivory tower somewhere. Or perhaps they're underground. Now, if at that point you still don't see them and you've searched high and low, that's when we're dealing with the 4th dimension, which we live in, a 4th dimensional reality, the dimension of time. And this is not a question of where they are, but when they are. Now, all of us are subject to these 4-dimensional laws, time being the 4th one. And this means that they could be there at that point, but maybe just at a different time than where you're at. And then to find them, you're gonna have to time travel. Now stay with me. Time exists in the concept of what's happening in the present, moving into the future. It's like the fabric in which our physical reality, its rules and our awareness of it exists. Even how we think about thinking is within time. So this is a physical experience as much as it is a time experience. So what happens at one time will affect something that happens at some other time. All right, Uncle Bobby, where you going with this? I'll tell you. See, consciousness, when practiced, always is tied to time travel. Now you're thinking about time travel from science fiction stories or as studied in physics. And that's cool, so you know it deals with one being able to move through different points in time in a way other than how we normally perceive time. And the theory of relativity supports that the faster we travel, the slower we experience time. And studies using clocks on airplanes shows it can be experienced in moving forward, but only very slightly. But at the CUREiculum, what am I really talking about when I say time travel? Well, all we know of life is what we perceive. For everyone, our understandings are based on how our senses make sense of these 4 dimensions. Our perception is our reality. So I'm going to define time travel as the ability to perceive and interact with any time period other than your own. And by interacting, I mean affecting the quality of any action within that time period. Consciously making something happen. It's like having a conversation with another time period. And to be conscious, listen, we are always in a conversation with time. So we're always trying to make sense of what the past says. And conscious or not, we're always saying something to the future. Now, to consciously fathom this idea, you're gonna have to come to terms with something. Your own mortality. You'll need to understand that there was a time that existed before you, at least as you know yourself, and time that will exist after you die. And in caring about that, even in an abstract way, I've introduced myself to a clock. Something moving, but I can't see it. It's somewhere around here. I don't know which one it is, but when it runs out, but we know every life has one.
Now, this is your time.
We all are subject to respecting these seconds which make up our lives. And if you reject this idea, you've effectively abandoned any possibility of behaving consciously. You see, consciousness at its core is about understanding the interconnectivity of things. How something happening in one place affects how something happens somewhere else. And if laws of interdependence and exchange govern all nature, life, society, relationships, culture, health, and presumably all matter within the universe, then this doesn't mean just what's happening at this moment. When we practice consciousness or are trying to stay woke, we're not just conscious of what we do now, but the impact it will have after we physically can't do anything about it. Now, a simple way to think about this is a cell in the body. Imagine if this cell were to become aware of the fact that it's one of many, part of a whole interconnected system. This wouldn't be an ideology or opinion or even a religious orientation. It's just an awareness of the fact that what's happening in one place in the body does affect what happens throughout the entire body. So let's say that cell and how it functions is aware of the role that it's playing. And its objective being keeping the entire body operating in a healthy way to ensure its survival, but mostly the survival of the whole. On the flip side, behaving unconsciously may mean that that cell is ignorant to the fact that it's a part of a whole, a bigger picture. It only sees its own experience, its own isolated condition. It has no awareness of what's causing that condition around it or what condition it's presenting for others. And therefore that cell, in not being aware of the whole, may behave abnormally, something that's out of control, to self-serving. It wouldn't perform within the natural cell cycle within the body. And then as a result, may end up jeopardizing the entire body. And by the way, this type of unconscious cell, which kills other cells, invades surrounding tissue, appropriates resources for itself, abnormally and excessively reproduces itself, and avoids its own natural death, is called a cancer. Which reveals the keys to how we consciously time travel. Living right now in a way that respects other life on the planet, like a woke cell, not like a cancer. It's looking at others and seeing yourself is conscious.
Walk down the street of any city and look around you. What you got to remember is what you're looking at is also you. Everyone you're looking at is also you. You could be that person.
But also, in a 4D reality, consciousness would have to mean living in a way that respects life that's yet to be. to perceive the impact of what we do today on the future, to imagine it from their point of view and feel what they may feel. Which is why the curriculum defines consciousness as when we practice responsibility for the predictable outcomes of our actions. And we can be empathetic to these outcomes or not be. But either way, these actions are in direct communication with a world that's yet to take its first breath. And we know this because we live in communication with the past, learning from messages left behind, mistakes made, trying to rectify those things. And in this same right, the messages and information that we leave behind creates wisdom. And wisdom, in the concept of the body, is like immunity. It's where, say, a cell may be introduced to a certain type of virus. And once it knows how to deal with that virus doesn't have a chance at attacking the body. And properly passing down information and messages that we learn to generations to come, we give them immunity to things that harmed us. So then they can identify a threat, can solve a problem, build from where we left off. This isn't a theoretical concept. This is nature. And it's not just humans. And whether it takes the form of evolution or engineering, it impacts the culture of every present moment. Now, this being a built-in natural process of problem solving, moments build upon each other, and that there is a continuum of time. What makes it seem like some things can't get solved or resolved, that they'll never change? Well, let's first agree on that change is constant. It's part of nature. It's how biology works, how species evolve, how health is prolonged, how cultures refine themselves, how planets survive. So what that's saying is, if you had an answer for this problem, the reason you do has to do with how you're perceiving time. The fourth dimension, 3 dimensions alone would be static, but 4 dimensions is where change, movement, and movements happen.
You stay on top of me for 500 years, something got to change sometime. Another 500 years, it will change. It will change.
4 dimensions literally give us something to look forward to. Here, our desires and intention matter because matter is the result of desire and intention. And whenever we've been presented with a problem, with an obstacle, what gets us out of it is our ability to think through it.
Old school situation may deserve an old school track because we didn't change it yet, the prison's fault too.
So even what we understand is our systems right now, for example, prisons, have the opportunity to be reformed in ways that present a better solution.
Who's getting that money? Firstly, crime doesn't need punishment. It's wreaking havoc on morale, cost of the budget.
Think of any concern somebody may have had in history and the way that they ultimately resolved it.
Get converted to community workshops, restored
to conceptualize a solution, and then using more seconds to share the solution.
This may take a true leader to sell it. That's irrelevant.
And in proposing these solutions to each other in a way that legitimately believes that there is the potential for change to happen, we advance toward a new reality.
Here's how you roll out the New Deal Phase 1. Put pressure on blacks and Latins with millions to purchase.
And this is true of any believer in change. They did this through using those seconds of a clock somewhere that they couldn't see. Imagine things that we can do with that time.
We say everything changes all the time. It's a fact. Since you know things will change, here's where consciousness plays a crucial role. The job of consciousness is to speed up change.
When we, you, me, are conscious, we're bearing witness to a chain of events. A chain of events that affects the next generation.
I I didn't have a baby to see him be cannon fodder. Something more must be decided. If it's a real war, then he must be brave and true. But if it's the Wake the People Up war, Martin Luther King did that. Malcolm X did that. Stokely Carmichael did that. Rap Brown did it. And if people aren't awake, then perhaps the dreams are too good to be disturbed again.
If we're conscious right now of our actions, the impact and messages we leave, grant us the ability to travel into the future. And when we consciously connect to the past and lives before our own, we affirm their actions, their experiences, their existence right now within the continuum. So these believers, what are they trying to tell us? Where and who are they? You already know.
I may not get there with you.
Maybe we need to reconsider our sense of time.
I ain't got no time for later. I want it now. Capitalism makes you think that everything must come now. But the struggle in which you're involved in is a struggle in which you will not reap that which you've sown. You have already reaping that which has been sown by past generations.
Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave.
You must sow for future generations to reap.
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now.
When we gonna enjoy the good life? It ain't for you, it's for the next generation. Do your work now for the next generation.
Maybe we think that we need to do away with elite rule and with class rule and with sexual inequality and racism. We think we need to do it while we live. And maybe we ought to understand that maybe we can't do that, but we can move in that direction. And in the course of that moving in that direction, a lot of people will change, and change in very good ways, and a lot of good things will happen. But I think we have to have a much longer time perspective than a lot of people in social movements have had up to this point.
Thus, we must wipe out from our minds that the struggle in which we're involved in is going to give us any victories. The struggle in which we're involved in is an eternal struggle. We are not working for ourselves. We are working for generations to come. Therefore, what I've done, you ain't even begin to see. Generations later will come to thank us for the work we've done now.
But wait, who are these people? They're you. To conceptualize a solution and then using more seconds to share.
I'm Uncle Baye, onward and upward.